Welcome back to Fast Market, everyone. Kevin Hinks back here with Nathan Peterson now on the phone. It's time now for our cash tag segment. For that, I'd like to bring in the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, Mr. Andy Swan, to the show. Andy, thanks for coming on, as always. Talking Airbnb. Andy, what is this company? Your data is showing, frankly, a little drop-off in some of their data, some of their metrics, some of their strength. Are they getting stale? Do they need to reinvent themselves already? Or what's the problem here with Airbnb?
Yeah, Airbnb is one of those phenomenons. When it first came on, you couldn't have asked for a better environment. People were, really looking for alternatives to traditional hotels. They provided a unique experience like VRBO, and interest rates were really low, which made it really easy for people to get in the business of providing those spaces to Airbnb's customers. But today we're in a much different scenario. We see Airbnb as very stale. I think the way you put it is really good. Consumer happiness levels for Airbnb are quite frankly pathetic. When you compare Airbnb consumer happiness levels to that of hotel chains, or even some other competitors, it's really just bottom of the barrel. People are not enjoying the experiences that they have. Most of it is due to the fees, the cleaning fees,
Sure.
the rules that they endure in order to stay at these places. Very different than what it was just a few years ago, because what's happened is the owners of Airbnb properties have had to find ways to create more revenue in order to keep up with the interest rates and payments that they're having to pay on these properties that they've taken out. And instead of doing so through the listing price, they will instead hide those fees and the cleaning fees and so on. And sometimes that can be a large portion of the bill that you end up with. So people are getting really, really tired of that. We're also seeing web visits down 8% year over year, which when you compare that to traditional hotels and just travel in general, those are all surging, but Airbnb is falling off, which suggests to us a real slowdown in bookings, a real slowdown in interest from the consumer at staying at these properties. And so you kind of have, you had the perfect wave to ride, a few years ago, low interest rates, plentiful properties, everybody's happy when they stay there, versus what I would call everything working against Airbnb now. That is upset customers, declining demand, and a kind of potential death spiral, I would call it, that Airbnb is in, because no one in the marketplace is very happy with what's going on.
Hey, Andy, if I was an Airbnb shareholder, and I don't want to paint too much of a bearish picture, but if I look back to last Thursday's Expedia's results and how the stock did post-earnings, and if I look at Marriott's guidance this morning, talking about moderation in travel demand, and I consider that basically right in the wheelhouse of what Airbnb does, yet the stock really didn't, sell off with NVIDIA on that report. Should I be concerned heading into tonight's numbers?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's every reason to be concerned. You've got all of those macro indicators. You've got those indicators coming from competitive companies and the industry, which are fairly negative. Plus, just from LikeFolio data and your own experience in talking to people, I think it's very clear that the mood has changed in terms of how people view Airbnb, both on the provider side and the consumer or guest side. And so, we think that the tailwinds have shifted to headwinds. The only thing I think that keeps Airbnb stock from falling apart here potentially is that it could be seen as a decent acquisition for one of these travel companies that's looking to expand into that peer-to-peer marketplace of places to stay and expand their portfolio that way. But outside of that, everything that we're seeing for Airbnb, certainly pretty negative.
Andy, put on your Andy Swan entrepreneur hat for a moment here, and let's say you're running Airbnb. They've got about 6 million listings. They've got about 100 million nights per quarter they average in terms of bookings. What can you do to make that pie bigger? How do you get 100 million nights to 200 million? How do you get more supply? What's new in the pipeline, or do you need a new pipeline for new products? Can you get into other parts of travel? What can you do to keep interest in this company?
Yeah, the first question I would try to answer is, how do we help our hosts survive this storm? A lot of these folks bought into the Airbnb story. They bought properties specifically to list on Airbnb. Perhaps they made the mistake of taking out an adjustable rate loan on that. So how can I help those folks weather this storm so that they don't have to come after my customers, the guests, with these crazy fees? That would be one way I would think about this. How can I, cut into my profits, increase my expenses a little bit, but help these folks weather the storm? The other way I would think about things is, how do we expand what we offer? Are there unique hotel chains? Are there partners in the hotel world that we could that we could partner with to say, all right, we know you want to go to this city. Here are the options to stay in a home or a condo that's owned by one of our marketplace vendors, or if you'd like, we can hook you into one of these hotels and take a piece of that action as well. So that would be the first two things I would think of, is just how do you expand this marketplace, and how do you make the people that have bet on your company a little bit less frantic in the way that they're dealing with the properties that they own and list on your website.
Yeah, Andy, I was going to ask also, within regards to competition, it looks like they're clearly a market leader there, but how do they differentiate, whether it be it on the consumer side or their host side? How do they maintain or have that stickiness in terms of keeping their hosts happy, like you're mentioning, or having some consumers decide to go to their platform versus Vrbo, for example?
Yeah, I think that's a really tough question. Again, I think it comes down to, who is ultimately your customer? I think that's the question that Airbnb will need to answer. I hope someone on the conference call asks it tonight. Do you think of your guests as the ultimate customer, or do you think of your hosts as the ultimate customer? Because at some point you have to choose. And so if I'm Airbnb, I'm probably leaning a little bit more towards the host side, because I think without that supply, the demand cannot be there. And if that supply is frantic or panicked, then the experience of the guest is going to be terrible. And so I hope that's a question that they get. I hope that's a question that they ask, because I think it's the critical question for this company moving forward.
Andy Swan, we appreciate you coming on as always, spending some time and bringing the LikeFolio data to Fast Market. Andy, have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
All right, Nathan. Look